So here we are again at Bitesize Edge, and today we're having another conversation with an Edgeite. In this case, we're going to be talking to Beth Parmar. Welcome, Beth.
Hello, Pip.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. All good.
Good. So I wanted really just to have a chat with you, Beth, about how you found yourself exploring the world of NLP, but also how you use it in your working world, because primarily you work with children and young adults, am I right?
That's right, yeah, and also parents. And
the parents of said children and young adults.
Yes.
that always reminds me of that phrase, who's it a problem for? Is it the child or is it the parent? So yeah. It'd be really interesting, Beth, just to explore really how you found yourself. What was your backstory to starting your NLP journey?
So I was, so my kind of professional career was in human resources, specifically training and development and recruitment. And that's what I did for a number of years before taking a bit of a pause to have a family of my own. So I have 3 children of my own who are very big children now, and I did a little bit of consultancy in and around having children, but it really in the sort of the HR arena. Then I ran a pub for a couple of years, and it was then that I met you, Pip.
And at the pub.
At the pub, yes. And so at the end of the 2 years, realising that maybe pub life really wasn't for me, really at a crossroads. And I know that that's a phrase you hear a lot with people coming to Edge and starting their NLP journey. And it really was a crossroads, because I really didn't know what it was that I wanted to do career-wise. The kids were they were growing up, they were all at school. I was really keen to go and do something. I didn't really want to go back to HR because I felt I'd been out of it for a little while and the sort of landscape of HR was changing. And I was intrigued by NLP, and I know we had several chats, and I came along to the taster day, loved it, signed up for the practitioner course, loved it, life-changing, and I signed up for the masters too, and even more life-changing. And on the back of that, my one thought was, why didn't I learn this when I was at school? Why don't we teach this to kids? Because these are some really useful common sense skills which everybody should have. They shouldn't just gain them by luck of meeting someone who knows about NLP. So that was my thought, and so I developed a program for children. Then that sort of expanded to a program for parents, and more recently I've added a program for GCSE students around using NLP skills to help with their GCSE revision. And that's kind of my life in NLP.
That's how you got to it. So you did your prac course, how many years ago?
It must have been around 9 years ago now.
Wow. Okay. So how old would your children have been then, Beth?
So aged probably 8. My eldest would have been 8, and then a sort of 5 and a 4, something like that. So they were fairly young. They were just sort of school age, yeah. Right.
So you did initially did your prac course because you were at a crossroads and your motivation was around you. Yeah. Yes. How did you find the skills that you learned during that initial course? How did it impact you from a parenting perspective?
Massively, because I suddenly felt a lot more in control, and I certainly became, I think, you need to ask my kids whether this is actually the case and not just how I'm perceiving it. I believe I became a lot calmer parent and a lot more in control and a lot cleverer with my communication. And I don't think it's about duping kids and conning kids into doing stuff and the whole manipulative side of NLP. I don't really, I know there's a lot of talk. Some people think it's manipulative, but I think it's just about being effective. Yeah. So personally, I believe that I became a better parent. I think I gained better relationships with my children and my husband too, because of my ability to communicate better and to manage my physical state a lot better. And those are the real takeaways from a personal perspective that I got from the NLP training. And I was just really keen to share it with other parents.
Yeah. So on the back of that, and actually you make a really valid point, because it's not unusual to hear the word manipulation in the same sentence as the phrase NLP. And for me, that's all about intention as well, isn't it? So, in best will of the world, anything can be manipulated if the person chooses for that to be the outcome. So it's kind of setting the intention at the outset.
Yeah.
Itself is really interesting with your relationship then of choosing to go into working with young people primarily, where we'd always hope that the intention of our schools and things is a good intent to help those children grow. Where do you see, or where did you see the gap between what's happening in the education arena and actually what can be achieved with NLP?
I think the education system at the moment, you know, and we could have a very, very long debate about this. I know that's not the purpose of this short podcast. Is very content focused. It's very curriculum focused, and they're trying to cram a lot of syllabus into, you know, into the school day and into the school year. And I think what is lacking with the educational system as it is these sort of personal skills and these levels of teaching children how to feel better about themselves, how to behave in ways that life just gets a little bit easier, rather than these constant struggles, you know, and there's, you know, friendship struggles and these bad feelings of self-esteem that they're not good enough. There's, you know, kids seem to be constantly comparing themselves with other people, you know, other children their own age and famous people, and society has changed, and, you know, there's so many pressures on children. You know, and alongside that, they've got all of this content that they just need to learn, and what I think teachers don't always do. I mean, some do very, very well, but what the main sort of stream of teachers don't do is teach children how to learn, how to use their brains, how to focus, how to concentrate. They tell them to learn all this stuff and revise it for a test, but they don't actually explain how to do that and how they can be in control. And to be honest, I think a lot of teachers don't know how to use their brains effectively. So I think there is a massive gap, a real gap. And
how have you then utilised NLP to navigate through that gap with the students that you work with?
Yeah, so the approach that I have with students that I work with is I use NLP, and I use a lot of other sort of areas as well. It's not purely NLP focused. Yeah. A little bit of positive psychology, a little bit of CBT, a real kind of range of techniques, all kind of joined together in sort of my own little sort of pack of materials, as it were. And I work on a very strategy-based system. So it's not like counselling. So a lot of parents come to me thinking that I'm going to be counselling their child and kind of talking to them, you know, asking them to explain all their problems to me. I'm coming at it from a very strategy based, which seems to work really well for kids. Works really well for boys, I've noticed. I tend to get more boys than girls coming to me, because I think this sort of strategy, practical approach works much better than a very sort of talking based approach. And it works for both sexes, and yeah, so that's what I would do. I would teach them, you know, how their brain works. So I would teach them lots of techniques to manage their state. I teach them some thinking strategies, managing how they feel about themselves, managing how they sort of set goals. So it's a really, you know, it's an all-encompassing approach, really.
Yeah.
And where do you
get? Sorry, Beth, where have you had your greatest wins, do you think?
I think it's always small wins that I get. You know, I'm never, you know, because, well, I say it's a small win for me, but it's probably a massive win for the parent.
Yeah.
But, you know, because I see so many, you know, I see a high volume of students that, you know, all of the time. And I see lots of little changes taking place over the weeks that I work with them. But I think lovely success stories that I've had, like, you know, the child being really scared to go away on a school trip and really, really anxious and not wanting to be away from mum and dad and just stressing about it and not sleeping properly, through to being stopped in the street a few weeks later, to be thanked by the parent to say, oh my God, thank you so much for helping my child, because they've just been away on the school trip and absolutely loved it and they've signed up for the next one. So wow. It's really lovely to hear those, you know, those stories. Or, you know, I work with a lot of kids who suffer with anger and, you know, right. not being able to control their anger. You know, and hearing back that actually the whole household has benefited from their child being able to control their anger, because, as you know, anger is very contagious and it can affect the whole household. It's not just the one child who's struggling with anger. It can escalate very, very quickly. So by helping the child, I'm indirectly helping the whole family, you know, and wins like that are kind of the reason that I do the job I do, because I absolutely love it. And it's very, very nice to hear the success stories, you know, and I don't always hear them, you know, sometimes you just don't hear them. And, you know, you maybe hear a long time later that everything's worked out, but it's, but I've, you know, I don't think there's been a child that I haven't been able to do something for, and these little changes can make a big difference to family life.
And with because you said also that you work with parents, so it's interesting, isn't it? I always think about the analogy of the parent who said to me, could I work with their daughter who's 11 and sucking their thumb, and they really need to stop sucking their thumb. And my response to her is, who is it a problem for? Well, actually, it's a problem for me. So let's work with you as the parents. What's been your motivation to work with parents as well?
Because I think, you know, as you touched on with your example there, I think it's not the child who has the problem all the time. And I think, you know, the nature of parent and child relationships is that they're so kind of intertwined, and one problem for one person can escalate and affect the other person. And actually, I've had a lot of, you know, students that I've worked with over the years, whose parents have come to me and said, kind of almost fix my child. They'll go off and have a cup of coffee while I'm working with the child, and they come back and expect me to have fixed their child, when actually there's a lot that the parent needs to change in order to make sure that the techniques that I've introduced the child to are really kind of embedded at home. And in some cases, you know, almost like the techniques are used as a bit of a punishment, that, you know, come on, you need to do those things that Beth's been teaching you, and it turns into another thing to nag about. So I get the absolute best results when I work with the child and I work separately with the parent, and I'm teaching them the same techniques, and I'm teaching the parent fundamentally how to communicate with their child to make sure that those techniques are being encouraged and are being practiced, and are not becoming another chore like doing your homework. So that's when I get absolutely the best results. But some parents aren't always willing to help for themselves. They want to put everything into their child, and
okay, a little bit of resistance potentially.
Yeah.
So tell us, Beth, a little bit about the programs that you run.
Okay, so I do 3 programs. So my first program is called Brilliant Minds, and that's my program for 7 to 11-year-olds, and working in 4 main areas of confidence building, dealing with worries and anxieties, dealing with anger, and dealing with friendship issues. So those are the sort of my 4. Over the years, I've kind of narrowed them down into those 4 main areas, and I work with children in group workshops and also one-to-one. Predominantly my work is one-to-one, because I find I get much better results one-to-one, because it's much harder to sort of spread the one-to-one attention if it's a group workshop. And then I have a program for older children, which is called Heads Up, which is the GCSE revision program, which is a 4-part program. Each part is 1 hour, covering all the stages of GCSE revision, through from being able to focus and concentrate, working out what to do, time management, planning, very practical skills, what different ways to revise, and some memory skills as well. Really focusing on how the brain works and how to revise more effectively. And then my final program is Parent Powers, which is the parenting program, which I have on an audio as an audio program, and I also run live workshops as well. But again, I work a lot more one-to-one with parents, because I find it's much more effective to tailor the kind of help that they need to their current situation. So,
Brilliant. You also, I just want to explore a little bit, you also talked about CBT and NLP. Now, I often, and it isn't often, get asked about the relationship between the two. How are they similar? How are they different? And would you do one over the other? And I've got my own response to that, which is actually that I think they complement each other really well. But I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are when you're actively using, you know, both toolkits as well as many other things, I'm sure, with your students.
Yeah. I mean, I think my view is very much like yours. I think they're kind of intertwined together, and the approach that I take is, you know, as I mentioned before, it's very much bringing lots of techniques together to get a toolkit that just kind of works, to give children a choice of techniques that they can use in different situations, because NLP is fantastic, but there are some things which I think are useful to have as an addition, and I think CBT is one of those things, just to go in a little bit more detail around thought processes and the effect that thinking has, you know, on how we feel and how we behave and the results that we get. So I think it's very, I absolutely love the work around CBT and around sort of being able to manage your thought process and be really much more in control. And that's what I'm trying to impart to students, really, is the message really that they do have a lot more control than they may think. And I think life as a school child feels like you are completely out of control. All the decisions are being made for you. You're having to go places, wake up early, wear a school uniform, do lessons that might be boring. You don't want to do it, sit somewhere where you don't want to sit, you know, and it feels that it's not very empowering at all. And so by managing the thought process and by showing them situations where actually they have got a lot of control over things, you know, it's just one of the techniques that really helps children to feel more empowered, and that in turn really boosts their self-esteem. And, you know, I've seen some really, really dramatic changes with children feeling like they've got a lot more power and a lot more control, and they just feel better and more motivated about going to school, because the feeling of going to school is something that I work on a lot, the anxiety of going to school, or the lack of motivation, or they've got friendship struggles at school. And so a lot of the sort of techniques tend to be based around the child's belief about going to school, and the fact that, you know, it's all happening to them and there's nothing they can do about it. So it's showing them that, well, there's an awful lot that they can do about it if they learn these techniques.
And is that more at secondary school, when they move into secondary school, or is it?
No, I mean, it's primary school too. Primary school too. I mean, because I mean, our secondary school work is really, at the moment, I tend just to work with GCSE students. So I tend to work predominantly with primary school children, you know, on a one-to-one in more of a general level. With coaching and training, and it's from a primary school level, just feeling like they don't want to go to school.
Okay, gosh, so early.
But everything's coming forward, and they're being tested so much earlier, and the work is getting harder, and they're under so much pressure, you know, to achieve particular scores and to be in certain groups, and, you know, just to cover this volume of work. You know, and I don't think it's as fun as it could be.
No, I remember
school being quite fun, you know. And
not sure what I learned, but it was fun. So, Beth, if you were going to kind of sum up your experience of NLP, how would you do that?
I would say, you know, without sounding dramatic, NLP changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And it came, you know, I found NLP at the perfect time for me, let's say, at these crossroads, not knowing what to do. And I've managed to build a very rewarding and a very successful career by using the NLP concept. So for me, it was a personal journey, but also it gave me a profession, you know, and I'm now getting recognition, and I'm, you know, I've had the 9 years experience now of doing what I do, and it's getting easier each day. And I'm being able to do more and more stuff and diversify, and I've got various projects going on with other companies, which is brilliant. I'm writing material and being involved in stuff, being asked for sort of expert opinion on stuff. So it's really given me a professional base. But I think fundamentally it changed how I felt about myself. I'm a very different person, I think, than I was 9 years ago.
Brilliant. So you would pick up NLP. That's good news. Hey,
I recommend, and I have recommended it to many people over the years. I mean, it's a time commitment, it's a financial commitment, but it's, you know, I don't think you can put a value. No. Okay. It's absolutely priceless.
Fabulous. So Beth, how can people find you? People listening to this podcast, how can they find you?
So the best way is through my website. So it's www.bethparmar.co.uk, and Beth Parmar is the funny spelling, which is Parmar for the Parmar. I spend my life spelling it out. All the information about me, about my workshops, about my one-to-one is all on the website. I have a blog that I write there as well. But got a Facebook page where the links are all there as well. So yeah, that would be the best way for people to find me. And I do a free 15-minute chat over the phone, which is accessible by the website as well. So that's a really good way of being able to make contact.
Brilliant. But finally, need to ask you, Beth, how is the VW conversion coming along?
Oh, well, it's a Sprinter van, not a VW, so it's a little bit bigger than a VW, but it is going really well. I think we are literally a handful of weeks away from it being done. It's I have a kitchen. I've almost got a bed. Yeah, it's looking amazing. My husband is doing an amazing job, and we're hoping to take it out in August, maybe towards.
Oh, very exciting. Beth, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciated. For those of you listening, please come and follow us at Bitesize Edge. You can find us on Spotify and on iTunes currently. And Beth, thank you very much. Have a fabulous day. And it's been fabulous speaking to you.
Thanks very much.